Should I read this question? Because this is a question for Echo Charles. So that means I get to read it. Well, it's 2 questions actually, but I put them together because they're pretty close. Okay. Jocko Willink, what brought you and Echo Charles together? Can we get the backstory there? I like the chemistry. Echo Charles, question for you to answer on Jocko Podcast. What have you learned from Jocko, and how has your life changed since? This is Echo's first response to a question. Don't screw it up. Here we go. I'm going to heckle you.
Yeah, of course. Which is funny because that's kind of what brought us together, or part of what brought us together. And I think it's good that I answer this part because you probably remember a lot less of it. So I would say it was 2006. I had seen you like the first, within the first year of joining with Dean in 2005, but I didn't know you. I didn't talk to you, nothing like that. I just had heard of you from Dean. And then in like 2006, when we moved over to the boxing club, I rolled with you one time. I was still a white belt. Mm-hmm. And so that could have been still 2005. I don't know. And then, you beat me up and you were just more like this stoic guy. Mm-hmm. Basically, I would imagine the same guy that people interpret you to be from the outside, kind of like not intense, but just real like, oh yeah, just real matter of fact, Mm-hmm. So you beat me up or whatever, and then since I had already heard of you, you were Dean's black belt, and all this stuff that I was like, yeah, that's about right. He's good jiu-jitsu, whatever. Beat me up, but that wasn't really saying much because everyone was beating me up. And then time went on, I didn't see you for a while, and then when I started to kind of gig out, I was training with Brent. Remember Brent? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was training with him, and then with Elias a little bit, and then you'd come back. I was competing, and then you were just around for whatever reason. And then, I just started training with you. And
I think that's when we opened Victory, right?
Yes.
It was around the same time.
Yeah, exactly. And then, what was funny is that you never came off, like once I knew you, like immediately, you never came off as this super intense person. Like it was more like you were just sarcastic, like like any other of my friends, but you could still always tell that there was something behind the scenes. You know how Joe Rogan said, like, he seen you and he was like, there's something up with this guy. So I kind of got that same feeling. But you were always just like, oh, yeah, this real matter of fact, but funny, like, kind of person or whatever. Like, but when I say matter of fact, I mean, like this one tournament when it was kind of later where I lost to Sean Roberts. He got me with a go-go plata. Mm-hmm. And, when you lose in a jiu-jitsu tournament, and that was the first time I lost since I went advanced, because I was doing a lot of no-gi, I had never lost. And Sean Roberts gets me with a go-go plata. So instead of you saying, hey, it's okay or nothing like that, you send me a text. You're sitting across the arena. You're right there. You send me a text. Hey, you got caught with a go-go. That's gotta sting. I was like, bro, this is a tournament. It's not practice. You can't say that kind of stuff. I was like, whatever. But I think that training together and just kind of getting, you kind of had that thing that you could say that kind of stuff because really, it's not that serious, Yeah.
Not.
I don't think there's not many people who could have conveyed that though. I think it had to come from you. Anyway, so yeah, that's kind of how we met, I'd say, and then kind of after a while, how did the idea of a podcast come up? Because we kind of talked about that a little bit before.
I kind of forget the formation, but it was in my mind when I went on Joe Rogan's. I think we had talked about, hey, we should do something. I think you said to me, like, hey, you should do it. And so when I went on Joe Rogan's and he said, you should do a podcast. Yeah. I think Tim Ferriss said, hey, you should do a podcast. Yeah. And then I kind of, you being a techie, sound guy, video guy, I just said, hey, do you know how to make a podcast? Yeah, that's right. I just said, hey, do you know how to make a podcast? Because I need to make one.
Yeah.
Because everything to me is just a total caveman, right? How do you, do I need a tape recorder? What do I need? That's what and so then you said, yeah, I know how to do that. I could make that happen. And then you said, it'd be cool instead of just you sitting there talking if you had someone to talk to. And I said, yeah, you're right. That would be cool. And then you said, It'd be cool if it was me.
Yeah. Well, my selling point was that's strange if it's just you
Right.
just sitting there. You know, it's more strange, and it's better if you have someone to kind of bounce things off of.
Agreed.
You know, especially someone who can kind of be like, "Oh, I'm just an everyday guy," like, so I can like ask questions that kind of reiterate the point. You know, to someone who might not get it. Yeah, I had it all thought out. You know, in my mind, I did anyway. But yeah, then obviously Joe Rogan was kind of the tipping point when he suggested it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that was great insight from Joe Rogan.
And I'm glad he did, and I'm glad you did, and I'm glad we did make this podcast happen. So to answer the question, what have I learned? And this is interesting because I asked myself this exact same question like a week ago. Because I am literally a different person now in ways that are kind of surprising in a way. So I'd say the first thing that's kind of not that surprising, but it's very prevalent is when I see people blaming other people or blaming me, or I feel the compulsion to blame someone else, it stands out like a sore thumb. Almost like if I'm feeling that, and it like almost like if I want to say something to indicate that I'm going to blame somebody or something, it's almost like a red flag. Like I'm not allowed to do that in my own mind. It's like this hard and fast rule. And like I said, they just stand out like a sore thumb everywhere though. On TV, the guy, not even my conversation. Oh, I see what you're doing right there, you know? So it's like your whole way of life in that regard is just shifted.
Extreme ownership and the awareness of that and seeing it in other people or lack of it in other people, it definitely stands out like crazy once you start thinking about it.
Yeah, and I have the luxury of being around you talking about these things, talking about examples of it every week.
Right.
So throughout the week, I'm like, I can't even help but notice it, you know? And it helps, man, because it applies to everyone and everything. Like most relationships are going to apply these principles, you know, if you're involved in them. So yeah, it's all automatic now. So when it comes to ownership and really blaming myself, if anyone, and focusing on my responsibility in any scenario, whatever, it comes automatic now. I would say
that's a huge step.
I mean, whether I make the right choices, that's always going to be a work in progress, I think. But as far as that attitude, it's automatic now.
That's awesome.
And then in regards to, so I've always been into working out. And so me not feeling like working out I've always felt like working out. So as far as not feeling like it, that wasn't really a factor, but in a bunch of other things in life, it was a factor. And so, so
you're saying not feeling like doing X, something. Y, or Z.
Yeah. Like, I gotta go to the post office today, and that's on the low end. And then, or the other one is, I don't know, something more important. Right. But maybe I'll wait till really the last minute, or, procrastination type stuff.
So you're getting into the here and now.
Yeah, and not feeling like it, that means absolutely nothing. If something needs to be done and I don't feel like it, and you know how like you have certain ideas already, and then other ideas are introduced, and then those ideas kind of mingle with your existing ideas, and they formulate this whole new course of action, right? So the not feeling like it is no excuse. That idea came in, and so now I'm like, it morphed into this thing, like me not feeling like it. Whoo, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to do it.
Right,
you know? So it's almost like this personal challenge now, you know? And man, as far as results go, man, you get everything done. I get so much stuff done, and it's not probably compared to you, it's nothing, but I get stuff done, like so many things done during the day that I never thought that I could do that many things in a day.
That's awesome.
You know, I was always looking for maybe a rest or a nap or something like that. But now every once in a while, I'll be challenging myself to do as many things as I can and be like solid. And on top of that, and you're the one who said this, was one time, one of the things you were kind of tired and you were like, you know what? But I like this. I like just grinding and grinding and grinding. And then at the end of the day, when I go to bed where my head just crashes into the pillow, I like that. And I was like, yeah, that sounds nice, you know? So I want to approach things like that now. And also, I think of all the good things that have been done, like great things and just good things or whatever. If these people didn't do it because they didn't feel like it, like these things wouldn't have got done, you know? So if you got stuff to do, you do it, whether you feel like it or not. That's what I have for myself now. And the last thing is, I kind of knew this, but man, it's so clear now that you can get certain messages and information and tips and tactics and stuff from people or the internet or books or whatever. But if you're not ready to accept them, you just won't accept them, or they'll just go in one ear and out the other. And a lot of time that has to do with who's saying it. So if, like, I don't know, your neighbor, some goof off, he's drinking a beer, smoking a cigarette, and he's like, hey, guess what? You should do this. And it can be this great advice, but you can be like, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm not even going to listen to you. I'm not even going to get past that part. The fact that you're the one that's saying this already walled me off from what you have to say. And that's natural, I think. But a lot of these things, like, you're reading these old books that have these messages that you've been saying. So it's not new stuff. And a lot of stuff, oh yeah, I heard that. Take responsibility for your actions.
Yeah, how old is that?
Yeah, that's not new. If I bust out, hey, you guy on the street, take responsibility for your actions. If something comes up, I'm just saying, he'd be like, yeah, that's nothing new. That wouldn't stand out. But for some reason, when you're saying it, it gets you thinking, yeah, let me take responsibility, So yeah, I'd say when it comes to listening to this podcast, all the the answers you have for these questions and any questions I even have, it seems like it comes and I process it way more readily than, memes on Facebook or wherever, So yeah,
That's awesome.
pretty transformative, I would say.
That's really cool. That's great to hear. And I've definitely seen a transition in everything you're doing. I mean, everything you're doing is spot on.
Yeah.
And that's legit. It's legit to see. It's legit to see someone moving towards their potential as a human.
Yeah.
That's awesome to see.
Yeah. And another thing that kind of I came to as not a conclusion, but which is a result. It's not a direct, like, you didn't tell me this, but this is what all my existing thoughts mixed with all your input kind of arrived at. One of the things is that it's up to you, it's up to me what I spend my time doing. It's totally up to me. And it's up to me what I fill my head with. Mm-hmm. So, like, I used to have these shows that I love to watch. I love to watch Hawaii Five-0 and Shark Tank. And that's kind of it. I don't really watch that much TV, but those two. That's maybe, 2 hours or so that I could be reading something that's going to help me through the rest of my life, or getting better at something that's going to help my, relationships or career or something like that. And I use that example because that seems pretty like not inconsequential because it's only 2 shows. It's not like I spend 10 hours a day watching TV. It's just 2 shows. Who cares? No harm in that, right? But that's up to me. I'm not missing out by missing Hawaii Five-0. I'm not missing out.
Nope.
That's not going to affect my life in any negative way in the future at all. It won't affect my life in any way, actually. But if I read something useful, educate myself in whatever arena that's going to improve my interest or my relationship or something like that, that will help me.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things I've noticed. I'd show up at the studio, and you'd say, "Oh, I was reading this book today about how we could get this to sound better," and I read this thing about you're coming back to me with all this information, and it was something that just transitioned in your brain where you said, "You know what? I could be watching TV and wasting my mind, or I could be applying myself and learning."
Yeah. And
that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, one of the things I read, actually, and I read it on, I want to say Wikipedia, this specific thing, but there's this automatic way of thinking, and it's called hyperbolic discounting, right? And all that means is you choose immediate payoffs versus, and I kind of mentioned this before, you choose immediate payoffs versus long-term payoffs, right? And it's there for a reason, survival mechanism in all these ways, but it's old. It exists for an environment that's not current. So if you can basically, be aware of that and combat that, where don't do the immediate payoff things. So just take what you're about to do, evaluate it. Is this going to help me other than the pleasure that I think, whether that in regards to food, drinking, TV shows, like if you watch reality TV, check yourself on that one. And ask yourself, is this going to help me in the future? And typically the answer for those types of things is going to be no. And then consider an alternative that you can do. And a lot of the stuff can be pleasurable that will help you in the future. And it's totally up to you. It's totally up to you.
Why not make the good choice?
Yeah. And the payoff, not only is it bigger, it lasts longer.
Yeah.
And the immediate payoff is gone. It's just a memory.